Why, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Innovantage podcast, where business meets tech to bring you your competitive edge. As always, I am your host, Max, and today we're going to be talking about AI and digital government. To help me with that task, I am joined by my guest, Hans Arents, who is the Senior Advisor for Digital Government at Digitaal Vlaanderen, and he is one of the key players in driving Flemish government's shift towards AI-powered, data-driven government. So, Hans, hi, welcome to the show.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this show.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How have you come to this place where you're advising the Flanders government on digitalization and AIification?
Well, I've been working for the Flemish government since the beginning of this century now, so almost 25 years. Before that, I had a career at the university as an AI researcher in the early 80s. And then I worked for private industry. And then starting in 2000, I joined the Flemish government, who was then working towards becoming an e-government. Nowadays, we're not talking about e-government anymore, but about digital government, because we realize that government has to be digital in its entirety, and it's not something special, it's just something that we have to be.
True. But not a lot of governments are at that stage yet, I feel.
No, and we are not at that stage yet as well. I remember some promises we made in 2000 about e-government, and I have to admit that 25 years later, we still haven't achieved them fully.
Why do you think that is, having been throughout this journey from the beginning?
Oh, it's a combination of two things. It's let's say the inherent slowness of government. Government has to be very careful in the things it does. So by nature, it only proceeds very slowly. And secondly, we have a tough time keeping up with the speed of technological developments. So it's that mismatch between the speed at which government can move and the speed at which technology moves that makes it difficult to stay up to date with the latest technological developments. And especially in AI, that's an even bigger challenge.
I can imagine. And so what motivated the government to even consider AI in the digitalization process that has been going on for decades at this point?
Well, the government has realized the last couple of years that digitalization of its services and of its internal operations is the key in achieving better operational efficiency and better service delivery to its citizens and its enterprises. So we were already convinced that digital is a key technology to achieve those goals, and we now realize that AI is an even better technology to help us achieve those goals.
So how is the Flemish government actually doing it, or how are you promoting it in the government?
Well, we're just at the very beginning of the whole history of introduction of AI in the Flemish government. We have been experimenting with AI for, let's say, 3-4 years now, with machine learning and deep learning.
Yeah.
And now with the emergence of generative AI, everything has become even more pressing, the need to integrate AI into our operations.
So can you maybe give me a little bit more insight into specific initiatives that are going on in the government? For example, I'm familiar with the Magda initiative about the
Yeah.
data.
Well, the Magda platform is something that was the heart of our digital government for the last couple of years. The Magda data exchange platform was first launched in 2006 and is the backbone of our backend delivering digital services to citizens and enterprises. It's not an AI-based platform, it's a service-oriented architecture providing means of exchanging data from what we call authentic data sources, or what they call at the European level base registries. So the information which we have on citizens and enterprises, so that he doesn't have to give his information over and over again. So the Magda platform is what has made it possible for us to implement the once only principle, that the citizen or the enterprise only has to give his information once, and then we can reuse that data for multiple purposes. So that's something we have been working on from 2006 until now. And then the last couple of years, as I just said, we've been experimenting with machine learning and deep learning
Hmm.
to primarily provide better digital services. And now, thanks to generative AI, we're also capable of improving our internal operations inside the government. To achieve that, we have created an AI expertise center in my agency. So my
Hmm.
agency, Digitaal Vlaanderen, is the agency which is responsible for the digital transformation of the Flemish government and also of the local governments.
Hmm.
And this AI expertise center is responsible for drafting an AI strategy, and it has four different other goals. We also want to prepare the Flemish administration for the use of AI, and especially our civil servants. We want to stimulate innovation using artificial intelligence. We want to focus in particular on having a trustworthy use of AI because we consider that trustworthiness is a very important goal for the use of AI in government. And we also want to build a number of reusable AI components so that it becomes easier inside the Flemish government and at the local government level to deliver AI-based data-driven solutions.
And do you use any other governments as like a blueprint or at least learn from others' experiences? For example, we've spoken to the Chief Digital Officer of Estonia, and he shared a little bit of Estonia's vision of implementing AI and data solutions
Mhm.
overall in the government, and it has been quite insightful. But you might be familiar with the bureaucrat system as well. Maybe there's a comparison between what is going on with them and with Flanders.
Yeah. Well, I've heard about the bureaucrat system, and I know it's basically chatbots which allow citizens or enterprises to talk to information and to talk to services provided by the Estonian government.
Hmm.
And that's an idea that we certainly like as well, because we just had a new Flemish government starting in this month, and in its plans for the next 5 years is included the creation of what they call a digital assistant. So they
Hmm.
also want to provide an AI-based digital assistant, which will assist yeah, citizens and enterprises in finding information and in using services provided by government. So we are certainly inspired by this bureaucrat example. Other governments that we typically look at are, we were inspired by the UK government.
Hmm.
Certainly in the early years of this century, with their government digital service, they were, yeah, front runner as far as the creation of an integrated digital service delivery was concerned. We also look at the Dutch government, which also takes AI very seriously. So there are a number of governments that we are inspired by, but we do try to follow our own way.
So what's the key difference then separates you from all the other
But
examples?
the key difference is that Belgium is a very complicated country in the sense that it's a country that basically exists from, you have a federal government, you have three regional governments, you have local governments, and yeah, the services that the citizen needs to use or wants to use are located at those three different levels. So there is a lot of integration necessary, not just technical integration, but also legal integration, organizational integration, to have a seamless service delivery to citizens and enterprises. And that is what makes life for a digital service provider in Belgium particularly difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. And that's one of the key challenges, I guess, for implementing
Yes.
any digital solution in an environment so rich with history and with infrastructure
Mhm.
and with previous solutions that no longer work. And like you said yourself, like technology is evolving so fast. You just start working on implementing one solution and there's already 100 others that come into place to replace it. And if we're talking about Estonia, for example, one of the things that helped them, as far as I remember from our conversation, was that, a lot of the infrastructure was built from scrap. After the fall of the
Mhm.
Soviet Union, there was not that much of history, it's clean slate. So that helped. With Belgium, I guess it's A bit different. A bit different.
Yes, in Belgium we have a lot of legacy systems and a lot of old but functional approaches to service delivery. So we have to take those into account when developing new systems. And it's
Yeah,
true that Estonia had the advantage of starting from a blank slate, from scratch. So that's always easier to do. But I can imagine that they have a lot of stuff now, which is also already becoming legacy. So sooner or later, they're going to face the same problems as we do.
true, true. Again, during our conversation, he mentioned that their overall digital literacy of the population was somewhere around like 87%, which is very, very high. But now they are faced with the challenge of data literacy, where it's basically the same level of complexity, and they need to raise the data literacy of the populace, of basically of everybody being aware what kind of data being
Mhm.
stored, where, for what purposes, where do they give it,
Yeah.
why do they use it, and so on and so forth. So with that, the numbers are much, 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 much lower than 87%. They want to get to like 70%, I think, by the end of the decade. So you see,
Mm.
another challenge immediately presented.
Yeah, but we face a similar challenge. I think that digital literacy in Belgium is not that high. I think it's more around 70%. So there is still a
Hmm.
digital gap and a serious problem of digital inclusion that has to be faced because we still have 30% of the Belgian and the Flemish population, which is not familiar with using digital services. We have followed the last couple of years a digital first approach, not a
Yeah.
digital only, but still a digital first, that we prefer to provide our services digitally. But we increasingly see that a large part of our population is still not comfortable with using those services. So the new Flemish government has said that we will devote more energy towards this digital inclusion, building services which are still available also non-digitally. And then I'm not even talking about the issue of data literacy. If we want to
Hmm.
start providing personalized digital services, that means that we need to use even more personal data, and then we will have to ask for permission to use that personal data. So people will need to have a great awareness of what data government has about them and what government can and cannot do with that data.
True. True. And specific infrastructure and specific laws and regulations need to be put in
Mhm.
place for that to work.
Mhm.
But I believe that that's basically the future. Data is already out there. It is being used by companies, by
Yeah.
governments, foreign and domestic. So the more literate people become, the better the situation should be in the
Mhm.
end. So
Yeah.
it's
That's one of the reasons why in Flanders we have created, the Flemish government has created what we call a data utility company, Atumi, which is a company which provides digital data wallets or data vaults in which a citizen can store data, and
Mhm.
then government or private enterprise can only access and use that data when the citizen gives his explicit consent that the data can be used. We believe that that model is going to be the model going forward when we try to provide personalized services, that we extract data from the citizens' personal data wallet, and that only can happen with the permission of the citizen.
Theoretically, that should raise the overall trust, I guess, in the government and
Yes.
those systems and how data is being handled. And I believe that's also one of the major concerns, right? How to raise the trust of the populace towards the digital government. I know, for example, like my grandparents would never even approach a digital government, but they are from a different era, I guess.
Mhm. Well, it's one of the key principles we have defined in our AI strategy, 6 principles for the use of AI in government. We have said that AI use in government has to be democratic. It has to be trustworthy. It has to be human-centered. It has to be sustainable. It
Mhm.
has to make a proper use of the data, certainly the personal data that we have, and it also needs to respect all the legislation which is defined at the European level. And it's especially this aspect of trustworthiness that we consider the key principle. because we see we have a yearly poll of the citizens, which is called the EMAC Digimeter, in which we ask citizens, for example, in what institutions do you still have trust? And then you see that one of the very few institutions in which citizens still have some trust is government. So if we lose that trust because we use AI in ways which the citizen doesn't understand or doesn't want, then we have to be aware that we will lose that trust, and then we're in a very tough spot.
Yeah. Trust is that thing that is very hard to get and very easy to lose. So being careful here is extremely important, I imagine.
Yeah, but you have, I think it's in a Dutch saying that trust arrives on foot but leaves on horseback. So
True.
It's far easier to lose trust than to gain trust.
True. Completely agree. And you mentioned regulations a little bit. So are there any particular challenges when it comes to regulations specifically at this time? Because regulations usually take some time to catch up to what actually is going on in the digital sphere.
Well, I think that the European Commission has done an admirable effort by drafting and approving the Artificial Intelligence Act, because that's a regulation which tries to prevent us from doing the wrong thing. If we look at what has happened with social media, there we see that regulation has come too late. We have the Digital Services Act and the Digital Market Act, which now tries to deal with the bad effects of social media. And now when it's already too late, and we hope that the AI Act comes soon enough in order to prevent bad things to happen with the use of AI. That being said, it's true that the AI Act is not a simple regulation. It's more than 200 pages of very densely written regulation, and we are still examining in detail how that regulation applies to government use of AI. The European Commission has always said that they only believe that about 10 to 15% of AI systems will fall in the high risk category. You have different categories of risk in the AI Act. Okay, that's perhaps true for the private sector, but we believe that in the government sector, in the public sector, the majority of systems will fall in the high risk category. So that means that a lot of our effort will go into fulfilling the obligations of the AI Act with respect to that high risk category.
And I guess time will also tell a little bit, right? Because I've heard, I'm not an expert on regulation myself, but I have spoken to people, and people have had different opinions on either the AI Act is a wonderful thing and it's wonderful that the EU is doing it, as opposed to the US, for example. Others have considered it, we're rushing into things and it will stifle innovation. What do you think? Is it a net positive or a net negative? At least.
My personal feeling would be that it is a net positive in the sense that, well, one of the goals, of course, is to have one regulation covering, a very broad field of application, but at least that we have one regulation for the whole of the European Union and for every possible AI system. That's a big challenge to define such a regulation, but once you have that, you can have a level playing field. Everybody knows what to respect. And that makes it even, I think, easier to have innovation, because then at least you know what to respect, and then you can innovate around the restrictions which are imposed by the regulation. If you look at the United States, you have no regulation at all, but you have like 200 or 300 different AI laws under development, most of which will never get approved because they can't agree on anything there. But nevertheless,
it's true.
They'll have a mix and match of lots of different AI regulations, which make it even more difficult to comply with those regulations.
Yeah.
I always say, as far as regulation is concerned, the saying, necessity is the mother of invention. Well, I always say that regulation is the mother-in-law of innovation, which means that if you have a good relationship with the regulation, you can still innovate. Like if you have a good relationship with your mother-in-law, you still can look forward to a good meal with her. So I believe that regulation is the mother-in-law of innovation.
That's a very wonderful saying. I cannot disagree with it. That is true. It's a two-way street, Like if the
Yeah.
regulation follows what the people want and where they are going, then it will support the road that they are on. If it's the other way around, if the regulation is
Mhm.
late or, out of
Yeah.
context, then it just
Yeah,
doesn't
and the
help.
European Commission has done some special efforts there by introducing this notion of regulatory artificial artificial intelligence sandboxes. So you have these regulatory sandboxes where you can experiment with AI systems and then detect that some parts of the regulation are too strict or are not strict enough. And
Mhm.
then you have the opportunity to still change the regulation where necessary.
That is good. That is good. I have said on this podcast numerous times that I am more a supporter of the regulation rather than a detractor. Again, full disclosure, not an expert, but from what I see and hear and kind of understand in my own mind, then it's more of a net positive as well in my mind. Like it should limit some factors while stimulating others, and like you said, the mother law of innovation. So yeah, and that's a phrase I'm going to repeat in the future in talking about it. But regulation is not the only challenge and it's not the only limiting factor, right? There's also ethics to consider when implementing
Mhm.
any AI solution. Again, when talking to a representative of the Estonian government, we talked about how theoretically further down the line, when the government has access to all of the data and has built models upon that data, it can support the populace through job recommendations, specialized trainings for people who are out of the job due to AI, and so on and so on and so forth. But for that to happen, there needs to be a lot of work put in. And the question of ethics in implementing those AI solutions is a high one and an important one. What do you think? What role does ethics play in all of this?
Well, in our AI strategy, we have also defined a number of ethical principles that we believe have to be respected. And we're very well aware of the fact that that is going to be the hardest thing to check before you start an AI project, whether you are fulfilling or respecting each of these ethical principles. So we're devising a tool to help you check whether you respect these ethical principles. And we will probably also have within the Flemish government an ethical board consisting
Mhm.
of external experts, uh, which will help us uh, check whether our AI systems respect fundamental ethical principles.
It's an important thing to have, I think. Like a board that's specifically dedicated to ethics is, well, at least it should do some good at the very least. I'm not going to go into specifics of asking you how specifically that board is selected, though I am curious. But I do want to say, like, do you see the difference between a government approach to ethics in AI and the private sector approach to ethics in AI? Because I have a feeling that in the private sector, ethics play a very, very minor role in the end.
It depends on what kind of ethics you want to follow as a company. Yeah? If you say the only ethics, the only thing I want to do is provide value to my shareholders, that's an ethical principle as any other, but it's not an ethical principle which we can follow as a government. As a government, we have to be aware that we have to respect fundamental human rights and the dignity of people. So that we have to treat everybody the same way. So those are things which a company does not necessarily have to do, and which is perfectly acceptable for a company, but not for a democratically elected government.
Yes, yes. But I feel ethics still are important, like providing value to the shareholders is, of course, the main thing that most companies are driven by. That's just the nature of capitalism. What can you do? But at the same time, there's just your basic human ethics and those ethics boards. If more companies had them, I think that would be also a net positive in the end. Though, again, it might stifle innovation by making it slower. So,
Yeah, but in most companies, even if they would have an ethical board, it would be more a check the
yeah,
boxes
checklist.
exercise. Like they have to follow up sustainability and social requirements as well. And there as well, you see that for most companies, it's just okay, we report on that, but we don't actually do what we say. So I'm afraid that taking ethical considerations into account in a number of companies will also be a very formal exercise, but not a very yeah, very truthful exercise.
That perspective sounds bleak, to be honest. Like AI solutions being developed very rapidly without consideration for ethics is, well, disturbing.
Yeah, it will be up to. That's what the AI Act says as well. So certainly, if they are high risk AI systems, they will have to do an ex ante, yeah, before they bring the product to market. They will have to do a conformity assessment. That's something which the enterprise has to do, not the market authority. But
Mhm.
if somebody then says, I don't think that this system complies with the AI Act, it's up to the market authorities in the different member states to verify whether the company has complied with all the obligations of the AI Act or not. So it will depend a lot on how many, how do we staff these market authorities so that they have enough people and expertise to keep an eye on all these new AI solutions which will be produced by the private sector.
True, true. That's the role of regulation that is very important moving forward. And I feel like the model that the government will use when approaching development of these solutions and the ethics in these solutions can be adopted by companies as well. Like if it works
Mm-hmm.
for the government, it can work for companies, though they are, they still think differently and they
Yeah.
perform a different function. But the model itself, if it works and it
Mm-hmm.
is adapted already to regulation, then why not? Why not use whatever works already?
Government in its use of AI doesn't only have to be trustworthy; it also has to set the example.
Yeah.
If we don't do it the right way, then private sector will certainly not do it the right way. So we have to be, yeah, without we have to do things without any second thoughts. We have to do things like they have to be done according to the AI Act.
Yeah. Yeah. And it may take a little bit more time in the end, but the end result I feel will be better than the opposite. Again, it's much easier to lose trust
Mhm.
than to gain
Yeah.
it.
We will have something similar to what happened when the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation,
Yeah.
was came into was enforced or became law. You see that it's especially governments who have to struggle a lot with the GDPR, even more than private enterprises.
True. True. For private enterprises, a lot of the time I feel it's just about, putting a banner on your website and then just not changing a lot of the processes
Mhm.
that you already have.
That's true.
Unless, of course, you're being fined and the laws are being enforced. But that's, you know, you can enforce the law on everybody, especially small companies, especially in such a large scale. Yeah. So we've talked about innovation overall and the continuous pace of innovation, that it's never ending and it's always there. Um, and we've talked a little bit about the balance that you need to have between implementing new solutions and and still solving the challenges that come in day to day. So, in your mind, how do you find a balance between the two? Where does it usually lie between limitations and regulations and the desire for innovation and making the world a little bit better?
That will be a balance which will have to be found in each particular use case. So in each case, we will have to look at what do we want to do here, which is new and innovative, and to what extent does that still fit within the boundaries which have been defined by the AI Act. So I would first, that's also the goal of these AI regulatory sandboxes. I would
Yeah.
first try to innovate, see how far we can go, and then by looking at the restrictions imposed by the AI Act, limit parts of that innovation to what is allowed by regulation.
Hmm. And then again, the two-sided coin relationship begins, where you see where the limitations are. If those limitations make sense, you leave them in. If those limitations don't make sense because the technology changed, because the environment changed, because people changed, then that needs to be changed as well. And what is the end goal, the long-term goal of implementing AI solutions in the Flanders government, like years down the line?
The long-term goal is to have a government which is smarter, more agile, and more proactive. Smarter in the sense that it takes better data-driven decisions.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of data which we collect but which we do not use to base our decisions, our policy on. So that's something
Mm-hmm.
which we can exploit, all that data, to get better policy decisions. We want to be more agile in the sense that we want to be able to react far faster to new developments and yeah, we live in a very unstable world, so we have to be able to respond far faster to changes, economic changes, social changes. So that's something that AI should enable us to do. And then finally, we want to have a proactive government because we believe that uh, the ultimate goal is that we deliver services or that we deliver the things that the citizen is entitled to without him even having to use a digital service.
Mm-hmm.
A nice example that we have there is we have child support, which is paid by the Flemish government.
Yeah.
Well, the citizen doesn't have to ask for child support. He gets child support the day his child is born. From that day on, he automatically gets child support. When his child goes to primary school, he gets an even higher child support. So these are
Mm.
things which are done automatically. So
Oh,
that's a
well,
kind of proactive, personalized uh, service delivery that we want to be able to provide thanks to AI.
that sounds marvelously efficient. Just automatically things happening, because most of the time I feel a lot of people just spend.
Well, it's marvelously efficient for the citizen, but it's perhaps not so marvelously efficient for government in the sense that before that we counted on the fact that not everybody was asking for his child support, so we did not need to give so much money, government
True,
money to child
true.
support, and now we do it automatically. So now everybody who is entitled to it gets the child support.
See, that's a good example of an ethical question, right? Like, we can make the system more efficient, give people money automatically, but then, we need more money to do that because
Yes,
otherwise
yes.
it will not work. And when you extrapolate that to every single government system that exists, and there are a lot of them that exist in every single government, then you also need to account for these changes and for how people may exploit these systems as well,
Mhm.
because there are always bad actors in any given system,
Yeah.
especially in the government. Yeah, quite a challenge.
Basically, hmm?
Quite a challenge.
Yeah, but basically, I always say when we're looking at the use of AI in government, we're looking at two important places where we can use it. Is for our own civil servants, for our own employees, and
Mhm.
it's using it in our service delivery. And for our own civil servants, I always say I want that AI does not stand for artificial intelligence, but for augmented intelligence. We
Mm.
want to provide them with tools that empower them, that make them more capable of doing their day-to-day jobs. And as far as service delivery is concerned, we want AI not to stand for artificial intelligence. We want AI to stand for adaptive interactivity,
Mm.
which means that if you visit a government portal, you don't have multiple portals, you don't even have one single portal. You have a personal portal, which means that what you see on the portal is different what your neighbor sees on the portal. Like
Mm.
when you go to Amazon, what you see as products is different from what I see as products because
True.
Amazon knows you intimately what you typically buy. So we want to have a portal which is so hyper personalized that you see only those things which are relevant for you and for your level of digital expertise. And I think that's only possible through AI.
That's an interesting thought. I never thought about it this way, hyper personalization of the actual system you're interacting
Yeah.
with.
And then you
That,
come back to this issue of access to personal data
yeah,
and having the permission from the citizen to do so.
yeah, yeah, yeah. the more data you give, the better the result in the end of personalization and the effectiveness of the government to work with you, to help you, to integrate you into all of the systems. True, true. It's a very interesting thing because over here, for example, in Lithuania, we have a lot of digital systems as well, but they are very disconnected from one another. So healthcare system is one thing, immigration is one thing, like, I don't know, general government services are another thing, and they communicate between each other. Sure, they know stuff about you, but they are not one singular point of contact where you're like coming in, describing what you need done. You should understand where to go and what to ask for in the beginning before you start. And what you're describing is the other way around. Like you come in and the system basically already knows about you, what you need. And it's a very interesting thing. Very interesting thing.
Yeah, you come in and I know that you're unemployed, or you come in and I know that you're a single mother of two children, and so the interface itself should adapt to your needs and your as they call it, the life events which are relevant for that particular moment in time in your life.
So, how long do you think until that vision comes into play? Is it decades? Is it more than decades?
Well, if I look back at how long it took us to get to some degree of an integrated data exchange in government, this has taken us 15 years almost, even more. It depends. It depends on the speed at which AI will evolve and our capacity to integrate that AI into our systems. So I'm certainly thinking that AI will continue to evolve at the lightning speed that is evolving now. So that's not going to be a problem. But I don't know whether we as a government have the absorption capacity to integrate all that new AI technology into our day-to-day operations or in our service delivery.
True, true. That's also part of the trust that exists, right, between the government and the solutions that exist, that AI
Yeah.
solutions that exist out there.
Well, the citizen does not only have to have trust in us, we as a government have to have trust in these providers of AI systems as well.
Yeah,
Because sometimes I don't know whether you can fully trust an open AI to do what it should do with your data.
I think the answer is no. Like trusting a private entity with anything that relates to their profit is, well, historically does not turn out well. Profit always wins in the end. Maybe not now, maybe not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow it will win. And giving them that much control, probably not going to end well. Okay. Then maybe there are some other trends in AI-driven policy that we still haven't discussed yet that you would like to note.
Well, I said the two important trends which I see is this use of AI for data-driven policy decisions. So I always compare government to a bank. We are basically an information-driven enterprise, and we have
Mm,
to make as best as possible use of all that information. So instead of our politicians deciding based on their intuition, we should convince them to base their decisions more on data-driven insights. So that's where I see a very important role for the, let's say, classical machine learning, deep learning, analytics, AI.
mm,
And then a second place where I see an important role for AI is in simulation, in the sense that we have been experimenting with building digital twins for local authorities. So a digital
mhm,
twin of a city, applying AI-based algorithms. We can use a digital twin as a simulation of an entire city, and, for example, determine what is going to happen if we close off certain streets, what is going to happen to the air pollution in other streets. So there you can take also policy decisions based on a simulation of a real environment and base your decisions on AI-driven simulations.
Wow. That's also a very interesting thought. It should theoretically help very much with crisis situations where you can simulate a lot of potential crises that come up. For example, a global pandemic. What would happen if we were to face another global pandemic? And through digital twins, I guess you could simulate a lot of the things that might happen.
Well, these simulations had been made before the COVID pandemic of what was going to happen if we ever had a global pandemic. But the politicians who were told the results of the simulations didn't believe in the result of the simulations, or didn't believe in the likelihood of something like that ever happening. So they never took the necessary steps to be prepared for such an event. But
Yeah.
if you look, for example, now at what's happening all over the world as far as climate related disasters are concerned, if
Mm-hmm.
we want to prepare for those climate related disasters, we also need to be able to simulate certain events. Uh, we have what's happening now in Spain with this torrential rainfall and the
Mm-hmm.
resulting damage. We keep on saying something like that can happen in Flanders as well, even although it seems very unlikely. It
Oh,
can
wow.
happen as well, and we have had made simulations which, if you look at the number of the damage that would be caused, it's incredible. So.
So will the government be prepared this time when you show them the simulations?
They will try to at least take some measures to prevent the worst of it, but completely preventing it is impossible.
True.
Those kind of disasters test the limits of the adaptive measures we can still take.
Yeah, and I'm guessing simulations aren't perfect. Even with AI, there's still the difference between what the reality is and what a simulation can do. And like the
Well, I know
politicians
that Google
themselves.
has developed AI-based solutions for weather prediction, which are
Hmm.
far more accurate than the classical weather prediction models.
Oh, really? I'm not familiar with those.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to hear and see how that works.
As
Like,
long as they are based on past behavior. So, and they are based on past behavior, they are very good in predicting future behavior. But as we move into a climate territory which is completely unfamiliar and unknown, it becomes more and more difficult to predict what will happen.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That's true. We have many ways of going forward in regards to climate. The worst
Mhm.
case scenarios is one thing, the best case scenario is another thing. Reality is going to be somewhere in the middle as usual, and it's very hard to predict how and when, especially like how much impact we have on the environment. And we need to change it ourselves as we've done, just for the better, not for the worse.
Mhm.
So the public has a lot of misconceptions about AI. So when you're talking about AI in government, I'm sure a lot of people will hear that and think, okay, so the government is going to be a dystopian future where they will tell me what to do, where to go, they will control everything about my life, know everything, will have no privacy, no agency, no nothing. What can you say about the general misconceptions in implementing AI solutions into government, and how do you reply to those?
Yeah, well, what the public thinks about AI in government is, of course, influenced by all the science fiction movies they have seen
Of
about
course.
the improper use of AI. So it's very hard to go against that kind of preconception of how government is going to use AI. I think it will take a lot of convincing, a lot of communicating, a lot of effort in trying to tell the citizens that we want to use AI, as I said, in a trustworthy manner. I know we have an initiative which is called AMAI, which is about citizens using citizen science to develop AI projects, where
Hmm.
we show that where we ask the citizens where would you use AI for, and then we use the suggestions of the citizens and we let them vote on those suggestions to develop AI systems which are clearly a response to a need from the citizens. So that's one way we try to show that we listen to the citizens and their needs when developing AI systems.
So again, it comes down to trust of how to build it, how to show it, and I guess to literacy as well, what we discussed, right? If you understand what an AI solution is, and if like you said, maybe stop calling them AI solutions. Maybe there will be less comparisons with Skynet and everything else. So
Mhm.
then the understanding of what those systems are and how you use them and what to expect from them will also rise. And especially in those initiatives that you describe, the trust level will also rise. And, knowledge beats unknown.
Mhm.
People will just know more and be more prepared for it. I guess that's the end goal. Um, and what about some societal challenges that currently exist, for example, for people with disabilities or people that rely on the government support to function and to live and rely on it either constantly or sporadically? What kind of societal challenges do you feel the digital government of tomorrow will be able to solve more efficiently than the digital government of today?
Well, as I said, we're trying to apply AI in both in four domains. Basically, we're applying it in for day-to-day use in the back end, helping our civil servants to do their day-to-day job in a more effective way. In the front end, we want to provide systems that support civil servants which are in contact, physical contact with these. Yeah, with societal groups with special needs.
Yeah.
And then we have two other domains we want to use AI. We want to use AI, as I already said, for transforming the way we make decisions and take top policy, define policy programs. And we also want to use AI to radically transform our service delivery. Uh, what you're talking about is how can we support groups with special needs? We think that there is still a place for physical contact with civil servants, but we want to make it easier for those civil servants to help these groups. A nice example is what our Flemish employment service is doing. There you have the civil servant talking to somebody who is looking for work, and these conversations are being transcribed and written down by AI and then stored so that the civil servant can later on interrogate these different conversations which he had with the job seeker. The AI system will suggest follow-up actions that he can take towards the job seeker,
Yeah.
and even if the job seeker does not talk Dutch yet, the
Mm.
AI system will translate and transcribe the interview into Dutch for further use so that the civil servant can better service the job seeker. So that's a nice example of having AI augment the service which is provided by the civil servant at a physical place.
That's a very nice example, I feel. I've been in the shoes of immigrants. For example, I've immigrated several times over my lifetime, and I faced many challenges when it comes to, adapting to the local language, as a very
Mhm.
basic example. And some countries have specific processes in place of where you need to go through language courses before you're able to be integrated into the society. Others do it the other way around. You're integrated first and then you adopt the language and everything else. So having people be able to communicate with you along the way would definitely contribute to smoother integration from all. And I can definitely recall several situations where that would be very, very useful for my own sake. So that's a very interesting vision of the future, I would say. I would love
Mhm.
to see it.
Well, that's the idea, not just having a digital assistant which helps the citizen when he consults digital services, but also have a digital assistant for the civil servant who is in physical contact with the citizen, so
Yeah,
that he is helped by artificial intelligence to provide even better physical service to the citizen.
yeah, yeah. Also, an example from my life is my grandparents that live in Israel. They live basically in a care community, and a lot of that care community is being run by physical people. You cannot outsource a care community to a digital twin or a digital presence, a digital person, right? You can use it to augment that, sure, but you still need people to come in to help to measure medication, to see that people are healthy, to help them get up, to help them walk, to help them stand up, sit up, and everything else. And that's just one example, of course. And there are many, 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 many more.
Yeah. And that's something that we hope that as we can make our backend more efficient, that we can free up people, civil servants, for providing services at the front end, so that this physical and emotional contact with the citizen gets the support it needs.
That's a wonderful vision of the future. I hope we live to see it very soon, or at least, as soon as the regulations allow. Not too fast, not too fast. Take our time. Is there any particular project over your long career that you are very proud of that you may want to share?
Well, there is another project that the VDAB, the Flemish Employment Service, which is very nice, which is there they've used deep learning technology to better match job seekers and job offers by not only looking at their formal education and not just looking at what kind of diplomas do they have, what kind of universities have they been to, but also looking at what kind of competences have they acquired outside of formal education. When they were working in civil society or part of a hobby club, they can acquire competences which are also important or useful for a particular job. And those are competences which are typically not written down explicitly in your CV, but which can still be deduced from the history of the things you've done in your life. So this deep learning tries to extract these competences from CVs and then uses that to better match a job seekers with job offers. And we see that indeed improves the matches between job offers and job seekers, specifically for those job seekers which have less of not as many diplomas as we sometimes as employers sometimes want them to have.
True, true. It's a very interesting thing. That's the age-old debate, formal education versus actual experience. Combining the two into a system and a model that supports both employers and employees is wonderful. I've hired many people over the years, and it's very hard to judge a person by a CV. It's basically impossible. And at the same time, it's very hard to talk with every single person that sends you a CV most of the time. So yeah, that's a very cool project.
Well, we keep on saying that non-formal education is also important, but it's very hard to detect exactly what competences that you have then. So that's something that we can extract from your curriculum vitae, or we can extract from an interview that we have with you, where we simply ask, what are the other things you enjoy doing in life? What do you do in the weekends? What's the hobbies that you have? Because there are a number of competences which you can have acquired during your hobby, which are valuable for a job as well.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of people just suck at doing good CVs. They think that some things are relevant while they aren't, and the other way around works too. They think that some things are irrelevant when they actually are very, very important. So, seeing through that is a very, very interesting thing, to say the least. And having already done a lot and having, a lot of experience under your belt and a lot of projects under your belt, what would you advise to aspiring public sector workers be, like, existing in today's world, a very, very fast-paced one? How do you succeed? How do you make sure that the projects that you're trying to implement are actually getting implemented in the end?
Well, if it's specifically for let's say having successful AI projects, what we certainly need there is enough data literacy, being aware of the value and of data, of the importance of the quality of the data for the AI system that you want to build on top of that. So data literacy is very important. Then an ethical awareness, what can I not do with this data, and what can I use this AI system for, and what can I not use this AI system for? That sensitivity is also important. So you need to have an all-round person with technical, ethical, societal expertise And what we're specifically looking for in our AI projects is what we call AI translators.
Hmm.
That's people who are capable of translating the business need as it's formulated by a civil servant who can translate that business need into a technical solution. So he has
Hmm.
to have a knowledge of the two worlds, of the administrative world and of the technical world, and he has to be able to translate the needs into technical solutions, and the other way around, translate what is possible or not possible technologically into what can be done at the business side. And that's what we keep looking for those kinds of translators.
Oh, well, that's a very interesting, um, I don't know, description of a role. I've never heard it before. I've heard a lot of different things like, you know, interpreters of the digital sphere that can translate business logic into actionable logic for many different digital tools, not
Yeah.
AI specific ones.
Well, it's somebody who can act as a bridge between business and technology, which was always a problem. It is in every IT project you need somebody who can play that bridge role. But
Yeah,
in AI, it's even more important.
true, true. And it's going to change a little bit how that relationship works because AI is a bit of an unique technology in that regard. It's not obviously similar to what came before.
Yeah.
And the skill set you need is a bit different as well, I'm guessing.
And there is also an additional challenge which has to be faced, and I always talk when I talk about an AI project about the five Ds of an AI project. You
Hmm.
have the design, you have the development, you have the deployment, which is a challenge, deploying it the right way, the change management which goes with that. You have the
Sure.
daily use, which means you have to keep on tracking and monitoring what's being done with the AI system because it lives, it lives while it's being used. And then you have the D of decommissioning, and that's something which people underestimate. And by
Hmm.
decommissioning, I mean like decommissioning a nuclear power plant.
Hmm.
What we have to realize is that when we decommission, when we take an AI system out of production, that is going to be something far more delicate than taking an IT system out of production and replacing by a newer, replacing Word 2016 by Word 2020. Okay, it's still Word, but
Yeah.
if you have an AI system which was the tool which was used by your civil servant to do certain tasks, if you decommission that system, you will have to take specific steps to ease the transfer to a new system. Taking an AI system out of production, AI systems will embed themselves so deeply into the operations of a business that it will be very hard to take them out of production again. And that's what I call this decommissioning of AI systems.
But that's something that basically never happened before. It's a complete black box of how
But
it can
it's
theoretically.
something that we haven't had to face up till now because most of us are just starting with using uh, AI systems. But I can imagine, I don't know if you have ever played with Copilot for Microsoft Office as well.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Imagine that you have been using that for 1 or 2 years, and then you have been relying more and more on the functionalities of Copilot, and all of a sudden Microsoft decides we're going to stop that, or we're going to replace it by something completely new and different.
Mm.
You will face an important challenge of adapting to that new system, and
Yeah,
taking out of production the old system.
yeah. Yeah, I can definitely see whole business processes of companies being built around specific AI tools. It is
Yeah.
already happening for a fact. And if that tool changes just a little bit, the whole process that this business has built also
And
changes.
I expect that AI systems will embed themselves far more deeply into your processes than classical IT systems.
Yeah, yeah. And even classical IT systems are very, very heavily embedded into business nowadays. You cannot exist without many of them. Like every single Google outage just paralyzes half the world immediately for that day.
Mhm.
Everybody takes a day off. Nothing can work. So with AI, I think I agree with you that the impact can become even more.
Yeah.
noticeable. So yeah, let's sum up a little bit of what we've already talked about. What would be the one key takeaway that you would advise public sector leaders when implementing AI solutions into their governments?
The one key takeaway is certainly at this phase of AI evolution is certainly start experimenting with AI. There
Hmm.
are always civil servants which are ahead of the rest, which are the early adapters. Try to find those people who are willing and eager to experiment with AI. Certainly, as far as the use of generative AI is concerned, it's important to find these people and have them experiment with generative AI tools so that you can see what are the processes inside government in which I can use these generative AI tools. Um, and then it's important to have, like we created AI Expertise Center, to have a central department or team or entity responsible in providing support to these different people experimenting with AI, because you do need to have some oversight of what is being done and whether they respect the regulations concerning AI.
That's nice advice. I feel like that's very, very concise. And don't forget about an ethics board somewhere along the way. I think that also can help. Thank you, Hans. Thank you for sharing your insights into how Flanders currently faces its AI challenges and painting a bit of a vision of the future. I think a positive one more than a negative one. So that's nice to look forward to. And thank you all as well for listening to us. If you want to know more about the developments of the digital in governments, please follow Hans on LinkedIn. And if you want to hear us talk more about different topics about business and tech, follow us here on YouTube or on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else that you manage to find us. Leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe. And together we might build a better future with the help of government and regulation. Thank you all, and bye bye.